Anthony James was a determined man who wanted nothing but a peaceful and contented life. He had always wanted to work for one specific company all his life, so when he came across a job opening for the role of a janitor in that said company, he quickly applied. He was delighted when he got called for an interview and was immediately hired. On his first day on the job, he was cleaning the building's main lobby when a gorgeous blonde woman entered the door. She was in a pastel pink blazer and pants, a crisp white top, and a pair of nude stiletto heels. He was mesmerized. "Good morning," he proceeded to greet her. When Anastasia saw him in his janitor's uniform, she took her sunglasses off to give him a stern look before continuing to walk past him. "What's with her?" he asked the security guard after she entered the elevator with her bodyguard and secretary. "Well, she's the owner of this company. She doesn't exactly mingle with people like us. I'm just a security guard and you're just a janitor," he explained. Anthony shrugged this off, falling head over heels in love with Anastasia. The next day, he decided to clean the lobby at the exact same time as yesterday so that he could bump into Anastasia again. He did, and this time, he came prepared. As Anastasia was about to enter the elevator, Anthony approached her. "Flowers for you, beautiful madam," he said, handing her a bouquet of roses. The people around Anastasia did not bother trying to hide their laughter. She took the bouquet to inspect it before handing it to her secretary. "Stop wasting your time," she started to say, crossing her arms. "I'm never going out with a janitor like you," she said before the elevator doors closed. At that, woos and strong laughter emanated from all over the lobby. So many people heard what had just happened, and Anthony felt humiliated. But in spite of the embarrassment, he was determined to give it one more try. So one day, while Anastasia was on the executive floor, he approached her and gave her a canvas. "I painted this myself. It's a portrait of you. I hope you like it," he said. Everyone working on the same floor saw the encounter. "Well, isn't he determined?" one secretary whispered to another. "He's embarrassing himself again," another man said, shaking his head. Despite hearing people whispering behind his back, Anthony faced Anastasia with a smile, hoping she would accept the gift. To his surprise, she did. "Thanks," she muttered, getting the canvas and giving it to her secretary. Anthony couldn't help but grin. He turned away, still smiling, then got back to work. That same afternoon, he went back to the executive floor to clean up. He was surprised to see the painting next to the trash. "I thought she liked it," he sighed, getting the painting to take back home. Feeling defeated, Anthony decided to call his good friend from school, Alice. He was hoping she could give him advice on what to do with Anastasia. In a couple of minutes, Alice arrived at his house with dinner for the two of them. "I'm all ears," she said. "Well, I'm completely in love with the owner of the company I work at, but she won't pay me any attention because I'm just a janitor. I've tried giving her flowers, giving her a painting, but they all ended up in the trash," he explained. Alice wanted to help her friend, so she decided to give him some advice. "You know, sometimes these women don't like being surprised with grand gestures, especially at the workplace. She's the CEO of the company, and she has a reputation to uphold, so being all sweet and loved up in front of her employees is something she isn't likely to do," Alice explained. "Why don't you give her some space and just drop some hints here and there about your interest? You don't have to keep showering her with gifts, just show her your pure intentions," she added. Anthony realized that Alice was right. He had been too aggressive in trying to impress Anastasia that it likely weirded her out. The next day, he decided to try a different approach. When he had to empty out the trash in Anastasia's office, he simply greeted her. "Good morning. I'm just going to take out the trash. Is there anything else you need me to do?" he asked her. Anastasia looked at him and shook her head. "All right then, if there's anything you need, just dial the housekeeping line and I'll be right there," he smiled before leaving the room. Anastasia never called, but it didn't bother him as much. He decided to head home after work and just try again the next day. However, as he exited the building, he saw Anastasia carrying a box of heavy items to her car while it was raining. He rushed to her side and lifted the box from her arms. "Let me help you," he said. Anastasia rolled her eyes but allowed him to take the box. She went straight to the car and sat inside as she waited for Anthony to load the trunk. As he was about to reach the car, however, he tripped and fell into a puddle. His gray uniform was now covered in mud as he lifted an arm to save the box he was carrying. He was wet and cold, so he wondered whether Anastasia was willing to do him a favor. After loading the trunk, he asked Anastasia, "Do you mind dropping me off at the next bus stop? It's raining quite hard," he said. Anastasia shot him a disgusted look and rolled the window up before driving away. "How mean," he muttered to himself, upset. Anthony went back inside the office to change his soiled clothes, and instead of going home, he went to a bar and drank his frustrations away. While he was there, he bumped into a couple of friends from college who then let Alice know what he was doing. After a couple of minutes, she arrived and dragged him home. "What's wrong, Anthony? Why are you drinking on a weeknight?" she asked him as she guided him home. "Anastasia is so cruel. I helped her carry a heavy box to her car while it was raining, and I tripped and fell into a puddle. She didn't do anything but watch. I asked if she could drop me off at the bus station, but she just looked at me and drove away," he said. "I'm sorry, Anthony. You deserve better," Alice said, trying to comfort her friend. The next day, Anastasia threw a party for her employees at a local restaurant after they exceeded the company's quota for the month. She invited everyone except Anthony. He found out about the party after realizing everyone was heading to the same place after work. He decided to follow suit but stay at a cafe right beside the restaurant. He ordered a sandwich and a cup of coffee for himself, sketching on a notepad to pass the time. After a couple of hours passed, she noticed Anastasia stumbling out of the restaurant drunk. Everyone else had already left when she stayed behind to talk to a couple of men by the bar. As she was walking out, two men grabbed her by the waist, pretending to help her out. Anthony could see her trying to push them away, only to be held tighter. "Leave me alone," she tried to say. "Not so fast. Lady, the night is still young," one of the men said as they stood beside her on both sides to make sure she couldn't run. Anastasia could barely walk, but the two men held her in place as they walked towards a dark alley. Alarmed, Anthony quickly left the cafe and ran towards them. "Hey, leave her alone," he said, forcefully taking their arms off of her. "Back off, man," one of the men said, trying to push Anthony away. "I'm not backing off. I'm going to call the police if you continue being aggressive that way," Anthony threatened. At first, the two men scoffed until Anthony proceeded to bring out his phone. "Last chance," he said, glaring at the two men. "Come on, we can't go back to jail. She's not worth it," one of the men said before they both ran away. Anastasia struggled to recognize Anthony. When she finally did, she asked him, "I need you to take me to your place. If my father saw me drunk, he'd be really angry and disappointed," she said. Anthony led her to his apartment, which was only a block away from where they were. When she could no longer walk, he carried her and laid her on his bed while he slept on the floor. The next day, Anastasia woke up without saying goodbye or even leaving a thank you note. She was surprised to see how nice Anthony's apartment actually was. While it was small, it was neat and minimalist, like a perfect bachelor's pad. She quickly booked an Uber for her to get home before her dad noticed she didn't spend the night in her room. She took a quick shower, ate some breakfast, and headed back to work by driving one of her many cars. While driving, she thought about Anthony and how determined he was to take care of her. She realized he was different from the other men who only wanted her for her money. Although he could have, Anthony never took advantage of her. So she decided to finally give Anthony a chance. As she entered the building, she already expected him to be there. What she didn't know was that he'd be with another blonde lady by the entrance. "Hey, Anthony," Anastasia said, walking towards him. "I know I said I'd never be with a janitor, but you know what? I've decided to give it a try." "Who's that, by the way? Did you bring your sister to work?" she said, placing a hand on his chest. At that moment, Anthony held hands with the blonde woman he was with. "No, this is my girlfriend, Alice," he said with a smile on his face. "While you were busy laughing at me and humiliating me, I realized there was one person in my life who picked up the pieces every single time. Alice has always been there for me. The moment I woke up today, I realized I had been chasing the wrong person all along. So I drove straight to her house to apologize and to let her know my intentions of being in her life forever," he explained. "It's Alice that taught me what true love really means. Of course, you wouldn't understand it because all you care about is money, brands, and your reputation," he said. "She's here with me because I finally tendered my resignation. I'm leaving, he said, pointing to the car that just came out of the office valet parking. Anastasia's eyes widened. That's your car. How did you get that with a janitor's salary? She asked, shocked. Anthony dangled the keys to the sports car. I'm a programmer for a small IT company. It pays pretty well. To be honest, I knew you before I took a second job here. I was smitten. I wanted you to get to know me. And I wanted a quicker way to buy you a huge ring that I thought you deserved, he said. It turns out I've been fixing my eyes on the wrong woman. I've got the best one with me right here, he said. At that, Alice raised her hand and flashed the big diamond ring on her finger. It's just my promise ring to her. I can't wait until I can finally get her the engagement ring she deserves. Unlike you, she's willing to stand by me through thick and thin to wait for that day to finally come. It didn't matter to her how much I had or what my job was. She likes me for me, and I feel the same way about her, he said before they walked out the door.